the Jesus way.
Oh, the Jesus way
Is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way.
Oh, the Jesus way
Is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When he is king, all wars will cease. May his peace begin with me.
The New Community Project is a small organization with a big goal of changing the world by changing the way we relate to this wonderful planet and its people. How do they do that? They offer resources that challenge us, experiences that change us, as well as a community that gives us hope. Hello, I'm Brent Carlson, and welcome to Brethren Voices. Today, we have its director with us, David Radcliffe. David, welcome to Brethren Voices.
Nice to be here, Brent.
This is your first time to Portland in a long time.
It is, yes it is. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten here before now.
Well, we're very happy to have you. And you've been with us on Brethren Voices before, from Ecuador and the headwaters of the Amazon to Arctic Village in Alaska, and with our friends in the native Gwich'in tribe who live off the land in northern Alaska. We actually featured one of your presentations at the Harrisburg Congregation of the Church of the Brethren. And today you gave the message at Peace Church of the Brethren in Portland, Oregon. And I understand you just spent a week in Indiana. And you speak to children, you speak to school groups, college classes, you speak to whoever will have you as a guest speaker. Actually, you're on the road a lot. So what were you doing in Indiana?
Well, in Indiana, I was speaking to elementary kids, to middle school kids. I did a college and a congregation, and that took about a full week that I was there. Before that, I was actually in Iowa and Kansas and Nebraska and Pennsylvania and Virginia. So this has been I'm at the very end of a 4-week trip. And it kind of worked out best that way, just because partly once you're traveling, it's a little less expensive and you're already on the road and you kind of keep going from place to place. But also, it worked out this time that there were lots of people in these various places that were interested in me visiting and doing something with them. And so it just all kind of came together in kind of one package, you might say, for this trip.
So in a year's time, how much are you on the road?
That's a really good question. I think I probably speak about 150 times a year in various settings. Now that it might be 4 times or 5 times in one school on one day, so it's not like I went to 4 different schools that day, but maybe 150 times. So I guess probably for speaking, I'm traveling 3 to 3.5 months a year, something like that. And then we also do some learning tours. I'm away for those things. But in terms of travel in the U.S., 3.5 months probably a year, something like that.
That's really amazing. There used to be traveling ministers, and I kind of think maybe you have a little of that in you.
It feels a little bit like that's been my calling. Well, and partly is I think we feel like we need to get the message out of the things that we're concerned about, and we think others may want to think about too. So whenever the opportunities arise, we take advantage of them and go. I think you have to engage people, Brent. I think you have to be with them on a personal level, talking with them, hearing from them, having that interchange. I think that's really how to affect people on a deeper level. And that's really a big part of our program. We certainly have, I think, a nice set of flyers and a decent website, and we have a Facebook page and all that stuff. But I do think that it's the encounter of people, us with them with our sustainable living centers, all of us together on a learning tour. I mean, I think these are the ways you affect people on inside level. And then the change begins within them, that they begin to see themselves and the world a little bit differently. And then they become maybe change agents in their own communities.
The core of what you've been doing are your learning tours.
They get the headlines, that's for sure.
How do those programs get set up? How do you research and find places to go? And because when I've been on these programs with you, you go to places that tourists don't normally go, and you can't get there unless you have a reason and somebody to guide you when you arrive.
Well, the way an organization like ours works, especially if I work abroad, it's all about the partnerships. You have to have somebody there who's sort of on your wavelength, who also is looking for a collaboration with an outside partner, as we would be, and who know the lay of the land and their people and their culture, and who can guide you in your experience there. I mean, everything from good, food you can eat and water you can drink without getting sick, to arranging the logistics, and then probably the most critical thing, other than clean water, is the communities that you relate to. And they can lead you into these relationships that are off the beaten path, both in any way you want to look at that, both geographically, some of the places we go, really out of the way places, but also places where others maybe don't have the interest in engaging. And to me, that's where the real learning takes place.
I was very touched by the quality of the people that you put us in contact with, who talked to us about the oil drilling in the North Slope, that talked to us about the caribou herds, that talked about the climate change. And those were prominent people in the community who actually were lobbying our federal government to make a difference, and so the people would hear the message that there's something to be concerned about. So do you do that? You try to do that in the different places that you go, and how do you find those kind of people?
That's the key. Well, again, in Arctic Village, I knew somebody who'd been there, a Methodist person who'd been there. He had a contact with somebody. I called that person. They put me eventually in touch with Charlie Swaney, who you have met and appreciated over the years. So it was sort of a little bit of a circuitous, but going by somebody who you trust, who knows somebody they trust, who knows somebody they trust. And then other times it's just almost, you want to say happenstance. We'll be walking on a trail in Myanmar up in the Hill Tribe area. There's a couple young girls coming at us with wood baskets on their shoulder. I asked our guide Jimmy, who's now our partner with reforestation programs there as well as our trekking guide. I said, Jimmy, is there a chance we could talk to those girls? He said, let me see. He'll go and approach them. Usually people are very interested in telling their stories. Now in our culture it's a little different. Some strangers are coming up, they want to hear about you and your family and your life. You know, you're be a little skittish about that, but in many other places people consider it a gift they have to give, to talk a little about themselves and to know somebody else is interested in their life. So it all, you know, both there are some that are very planned in terms of the relationships we have, and some I like to take advantage of the moment to explore it or mine it for all we can learn and all we can share in the present situation.
One of the things that I know has been your focus recently is girls' education. And especially in Nepal and in South Sudan, you're really doing some wonderful things in partnership. Tell us about that. And also I heard that you've built a school, or you're partnering to build a specific school in South Sudan?
Yeah. Well, our organization tends to try to look for the most marginalized people in society and how can we be in conversation with them and support of them, even as we learn from them and allow them to share their voice with us. And of course, in a global society, young women are some of the most disadvantaged and disenfranchised people in many, many cultures. And so from the very beginning, I knew that the people in our network, as they're learning about these things, they want to do something. We all like to know that there's some action we can take or something we can move forward with these concerns we have. And so from the very beginning, we've had a program called Give a Girl a Chance, which works with local groups. In South Sudan, it's the Girl Child Education Development Association. In Nepal, it's the Shakti Samuha, a bunch of women who are former sex workers. In Myanmar, it's a Baptist development organization. We go with whoever's an available partner for us. And then we provide the funding, and these organizations then facilitate giving the grants to the most needy young women in the community, and also overseeing them to make, mentoring them kind of, to make sure they can follow ahead and stay on track with their education. It's included things like providing hygienic kits for girls in communities. I mean, as a male, I wouldn't have known the needs that young women have for personal hygiene, and yet our partners in Sudan said this is something that's very important. These girls are missing a few days of school a month, they get behind, they drop out, and so now a big part of our grant to South Sudan is for hygienic kits. They go not just to the girls we're giving scholarships to, but to all the girls in all the communities, all the girls in all the schools in the communities where we're working. So we just opened also a new program in Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. We found a Church of the Brethren person there that had a congregation going. He was very interested in equipping and empowering women and girls in his community. And so for the last year and this year and moving ahead to the future, we're supporting programs there as well. You mentioned the school. We were asked by our partners in South Sudan if we would consider providing the support for a girls' boarding school in their community. We don't typically build schools. We're about scholarships. We're not about bricks and mortar. But they sort of said, we really need this school for young women. We don't know where else to turn. We know you're a reliable partner. Will you come through for us? It's hard to say no to that. So we appealed to our network, and in the course of about 6 months, we raised $33,000.
Wow.
So part of it's just putting things out there. You sort of do it in trust or faith because we didn't have that much money in our normal accounts for this. So you're sort of putting it out and hoping your network will respond, and they were very generous. So yes, the school is up. It's been in operation for a little over a year now, and over 400 girls are enrolled.
Let's talk about Nepal for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
because you're doing some things in partnership in Nepal as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, again, one of the most poignant places on earth. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. It is the poorest country in the region, and that's a region that includes Bangladesh, to give you an idea. But women there have a especially hard time. There's a saying in Nepal, to be born a daughter is a lost life. And so young women from the get-go are sort of on the lower end of the social totem pole, you might say. And so a lot of young women, because they are devalued as women, but also because their families are poor, are often sent out of the country to do work in bars, in circuses, and often in the sex trade.
Sometimes the families actually sell them.
Yes, they get some money
and
for
they
them.
get some money, and then the girls work for nothing.
Yes, the girls are there till they've had to actually pay to go there, the vendor to get them there and the accommodations and everything, and they have to sometimes even work there till they pay that debt off, which can add to the time that they spend there. But the girls are almost like an economic commodity, it seems like. Now, not always are the parents fully aware of what's going on. If somebody comes to their poor village, says, I've got $50 or $60 for you, which might put a new tin roof on their house, they're thinking, okay, take my daughter off and give her a nice opportunity, some kind of new job, or maybe education down in India or the Gulf states. They take her there, she calls home after a week, everything's going fine, and then things begin to change. And so these young women are often trapped in the sex trade, ways that they can't find a way to escape, sometimes taken as young as 8 or 10 years old. And we hear some of those girls are injected with growth hormones to make them mature more quickly. So we work with a partner agency there called Shakti Samuha, which is translated Power Group. It's formed by a group of former sex workers who were freed in 1996 from some brothels in India, came back to Nepal to at best a lukewarm welcome. The Nepali government didn't know what to do with them. Did they have HIV? Were they even citizens? The girls maybe took away so young they didn't even know where they were from or what their real names were. And so these women said, we can't let this keep happening to young women. So they started this organization to recuperate these young women once they come home. And now we're also providing some funding for them to keep girls in school and get more income coming to their families so the girls aren't sent off in the first place. So we're very fortunate to work with a group like this, who, by the way, won, I guess, the Asian equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize last year.
Wow.
So they have some standing in the eyes of the regional community. And we've met them now on our learning tours and have full confidence in the work they're doing.
One of the things that impresses me is that you're working with local people, and this is not just, somebody from America telling them what they need, but you're, for instance, hygiene kits. I mean, they would know that. How would we know that? Mm-hmm. And for the women who've actually been in that lifestyle to be now the ones that are working with the young girls to keep them out, that is so empowering. I'm so impressed the way you're going about this.
Well, to me, it's the only way to do it, Brent. I mean, I guess there's organizations with a lot of high-powered specialists who can go and be in an area, another part of the world for an extended length of time, getting to know the culture, the situation, and do good work there. I guess my bottom line feeling is the more we can empower locals to do the work they often already know how to do themselves, but just don't have the resources. And they come with all the community connections, the cultural understanding, and so they really become the trusted guides for a group like ours, who even, I think, if we had the capacity, wouldn't be trying to send our people there. Now, we might send people to go and volunteer. For instance, Shakti Samuha has said they could use some volunteers in their main office to help them do some translation into English and, to write grants and to prepare reports. So that's something an outsider can usefully provide. And there might be other skill sets that would fit in those situations. But on the whole, I find it much more appropriate in all kinds of ways. And not to mention just in terms of financial efficiency, lots of money gets wasted, Brent, by organizations that come into an area thinking they know what the people need. People smile and say yes. I mean, what you're going to say if they want to build composting toilets in your community? You're going to smile and say yes. And then the 80 people leave and you turn them into chicken coops, which is what you really needed. But nobody asked. Now you've got the most expensive chicken coops in the world.
One of the things that I just wanted to highlight is the importance of education, because here we take education for granted. And yet, in many places, the education is available, but you can't pay for the supplies. You may have no money to pay for the small tuition. And you're making those kind of things possible.
Well, there's so many factors that keep a girl, particularly young women, young men too. To be honest, but most often young women out of school. Their parents may have a cultural bias against a girl getting a lot of education. In South Sudan, they have a saying: if a daughter gets too much education, it makes her stubborn, because she has her own ideas of what she wants to do with her life, her future, who she wants to marry. Not the old guys with the most cows, but the young guy she's got her eye on. And so there's lots of stigmatization of women continuing on with education. And so we think it's critical. It helps a girl avoid early marriage. It helps her avoid having lots of children. And young women that have an education eventually have children. Their children are happier, happier and healthier, actually. And the young women, they have more respect for themselves. They know they can do something purposeful with their lives. Yeah.
What kind of feedback do you get from the organizations that you're working with in those countries? And do you get some feedback that it's making a difference?
Well, they're deeply grateful, and partly because we don't come in with aid with a lot of strings attached. I was sitting in a meeting one time with a planning group in South Sudan of the women and men who were planning the programs there from South Sudan. I didn't say anything. I mean, I was listening and learning, and afterwards a woman in our delegation said to me, you know, I run an organization back in the States. We get grants from big donors. We have to jump through lots of hoops. You weren't asking them anything or really demanding anything. And I said, what do I know to be able to tell these people about how to run their programs here? So partly I think they're appreciative of our style of operating. I find it, I think a little bit unusual, frankly. Often donors come in wanting to call the shots. So people are appreciative of that. And then to see the young women in these schools that we go to visit, two things. One is they're always deeply grateful, because without the help of somebody in this situation, I mean, these girls walk miles to school. One girl kept running away to go to school even though she was getting beaten. You could see the straps on her back from being beaten from every time she ran away, and they caught her and brought her back home. Other girls have to don't go to school without adequate food or without adequate other things, but yet they make the effort to go if they just have the basic opportunity. So in a sense, we're doing the least important thing by providing some funding. I mean, it's critical, of course, but these young women are going through all these other things to make it possible for themselves to stay in school and get the education. And then we get a little feedback, let me say, in a challenging way sometimes. Young women in South Sudan have been telling us for the last 3 or 4 trips we've taken there, we appreciate the education we've gotten through your scholarships up to the 10th grade, which is as far as schools go there in their communities. But they say, we also want to ask you, can you send us on to Uganda for 2 more years of education in the better schools there, or to get vocational training? Now, I give them credit for standing up to the donor and, having the nerve, you might say, to say, thanks, but here's something else I want to ask of you. So these young women are strong. They know what they need in life, and they're willing to go even to the powerful donor, so it's quote unquote, to ask it. Well, they sort of wore me down, frankly, over all these times. And I'm thinking, I can't disregard what these young women are saying. How can I say no? Now, it costs $600 per girl per year. I can send 10 elementary girls to school for this. So there's the difficult dilemma. And we're a small organization. We only have so much budget for these things. So we set up a separate program. We're calling it Second Step. These young women want to take a second step to go on and further their education. I put it out to our donor base, our network, and inviting people to give money that they weren't going to give anyway to our general Give a Girl a Chance fund, sort of outside the normal giving channels to these girls. And this year we're sending 10 girls to school in Uganda. We just launched it last fall. So, again, you have to trust the girls on the one hand, that what they're saying, they know what they're talking about, these young women. You have to realize how valid that is. And then you also have to trust your network, that if you put it out there, they'll come through for you. I mean, and not for us, but come through for the girls.
Well, I met 2 men from South Sudan, Reverend Atanasis and Reverend Romano. I believe you know both of them. They are ministers today because somebody sponsored them. So without that chance, there's no hope.
These are kind of like seeds you're sowing. You don't know how it's going to work out for all these girls. I mean, the tangible, immediate thing is you kept them likely out of an early marriage and having children when they weren't ready to. In fact, they say in South Sudan, a 15-year-old girl is more likely to die in pregnancy and childbirth than to graduate from high school.
Wow.
Well, we had 50 girls graduate from high school last year that we supported with scholarships. So you're helping them get out of that and at least get them that first step toward a more promising future. And kind of how it develops from there is up to a lot of things, but you feel like you're just trying to do your part.
I was intrigued when I was in South Sudan that I saw streams of women walking with baskets on their head and loads of goods, but very few men. And somebody told me that the most common beast of burden in Africa is a woman.
You could generalize that to other parts of the world as well.
And that blows my mind, because that is also not anything I would have ever conceived of. And education gives her a choice, and maybe another chance, another possibility.
That's one thing that distinguishes our world from their world, choice. They're often, I think, trapped by what I call the economics of necessity. They're doing what they've got to do to provide for themselves and their families, but often not jobs with opportunity or with possibilities for advancement or even with dignity. Can I tell you one short story?
Please.
There was a woman we met on our most recent trip to South Sudan. Her name was Silverio Andrug, probably in her 40s. We learned from her that she'd had to drop out of school after the 2nd grade because it was during the war years and things were in upheaval. Plus, young women were always devalued in that culture anyway, so likely if anybody got to go to school, it would be her brother, but she might have been a refugee in Uganda. There's a whole generation in South Sudan of women now who, from those years, have very little, if any, education. Well, she got married at an early age, began having children, and 4 daughters later, her husband left her because he wanted a son. Now, I don't know a lot about genetics and biology, but they say the man is actually the one who's determining the sex of the offspring with his contribution to the equation. Well, this guy, men aren't that smart anyway, he left her to find out a woman who could give him a son. So she's left with a 2nd grade education, 4 daughters to take care of. She begins making homebrew, the local alcohol, which is, again, a job without dignity and often comes back on these women in a form of drunken men and drunken soldiers. Well, she heard about our tailoring project there. We provide training through our partner there for women to get, young women and older women to get involved in tailoring courses.
Tailoring
as in sewing, making clothes, really making clothes, mending and making. Treadle machines. So we provide the machines and the trainer. The women come and enroll. They graduate. Then we will sell them the machine at cost that they can pay back over time because they're business women now, and this wasn't my decision. But our partners there said, these women, they're making income. We shouldn't just give them the machine. Yeah. And so they can buy the machine back at cost over time, $10 a month or something. So Silverio went through the program, graduated with flying colors, got out, bought her own machine, and then her own tailoring shop. And so she's able to keep her daughters in school now. Wow. So there, we haven't talked a lot about our women's programs. That's a big part of our work too. But in this case, it helped the woman keep her own daughter in school, which to me would be the ideal situation. I'd rather for a parent themselves to have the wherewithal to send their own kids to school rather than depending on somebody from the outside. So a big part of our program, Brent, if I may say this, in differentiation maybe from some international economic theories, we'd like to capacitate people to be successful within their own economies. I don't want to see them run off to a sweatshop or run off to some other country to find work because there's nothing available in their economy or they haven't got the skills to take advantage of it. So we're trying to help women, particularly in this case, find a way to earn enough income in their own economy. They both, A, can take care of themselves and their families and their own communities, and they don't have to either themselves or their kids run off to the sweatshops in the big city to make stuff for us for pennies that, of course, was sold for a nice price back here at home.
I just saw a shirt yesterday at a big national store made in Tunisia that cost $295.
It probably cost $2.95 to make.
That was my thought. It didn't cost nearly that. So you have programs giving a girl a chance. You have programs for adult women?
Well, that's all under Give a Girl a Chance.
Oh.
We get that. I know it's a little bit of an odd name maybe for the women's part of it, but it seemed like a catchy name, and we fund both programs out of that, both for girls' education and for women's development. So we provide, through our partners, again, in Myanmar, microloans for women to start small businesses, and they've been very successful. One woman, she's a duck egg dealer, Brent. She takes duck eggs. Her name is Win-Win Mao. And she got a loan. And then how this works is the women get a loan from the pot of money that we provide our partner provides these communities. They get a loan out, they start their business, they pay back the loan. Other women can start businesses with the same money, etc.
Good.
So Win-Win, I said, she had the duck egg business going, and she would take them 2,000 eggs at a crack by herself to Yangon 100 miles away, first by boat, then by bus. She buys them for $0.10 in the Delta, where there's lots of ducks because there's lots of water, takes them to Yangon and sells them for 15 cents, making a nickel an egg. I said, win-win, what's this doing for you? She said, I'm seeing parts of the country I've never seen before. I'm a businesswoman for the first time. I can keep my children in school. I call that a win-win situation. So we're helping women take the step up. And there are all kinds of projects, pig projects and fish projects. She's got her duck egg project. In other places in South Sudan, the tailoring project we have going, a gardening project we support there, helping women get gardening tools to raise food for themselves and to sell. And one other little piece of this. These women in South Sudan and other places, they often are doing so much of the work around the house, around the community, but it's not pay work. You don't get a income from it. So they have to come to the husband asking for financial support when they need to buy food or clothes for the children or seeds for the garden or medicines for themselves. So in South Sudan, they've come to calling the women goalkeepers, like goalies in a soccer game, where you're standing around waiting for something to come to you all the time, which is just sort of very stigmatizing of the women for all the work they do. So another thing these income-producing jobs get to offer these women is the chance for have dignity in the marital relationship. They don't have to come groveling to the husband and be then sort of talked down to because you need money. They're able to provide some money for themselves that they, again, it's a self-esteem issue in that case. And so one of the unintended side effects that I wasn't aware of is the self-esteem issue of having the girls in school and how it makes them feel, but the women also being capacitized that they can fend for themselves financially.
David, thank you for being with us.
Pleasure as always. Thank you for talking with me.
The pleasure is ours as well. Will you come back and talk about other things?
If you'll have me.
I'm sure we will. Thank you so much. To learn more about what New Community Projects does, I'd like you to know that their website, www.newcommunityproject.org, is available to you on the wide world web. For Brethren Voices, this is Brent Carlson.
For a New Community Project, this is David Radcliffe. Wishing you peace.
All those who tread the path he trod, all those who tread the path he trod, all those who tread the path he trod shall be called the friends of God. May his peace begin with me. Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When he is king, all wars will cease. May his peace begin with me.